one thing we can do obviously is quickly do a catch up of what Timothy and I were talking about. I think after fact having looked at it, I found some potential what would you call it? Like where we're not aligned on what is currently modeled in the Tuesday meetings. I think so. I have one thing I want to check off. I also already wrote in Hangouts, but after the lengthy thread in Slack, I think I uncovered something where you might not be aligned, and that would be interesting. So that's one suggestion.
I'm all for it. Listen, I did not get as ready as I could have, so sure. Oh my God, so that was I didn't see the thread yesterday. Oh God.
But we can summarize it for you. That's a beauty.
Yeah, don't read it.
That would be nice, yeah.
Please.
Do you want to try summarizing, Tim, or shall I?
Oh God. I don't know if it. Maybe you should try. You go first.
For me, the question was, what is the role of, in a broader sense, right? What is the role of argument text in our current model? Do we model it or don't we model it? And how is it related to claim text of premises in its furthest? But I think it makes sense to have some drawings with it. So maybe it makes sense to refer to the instance diagram you actually made, Tim. See whether I can find that link.
I could share the screen.
Yeah, that would help, because it also highlights, I think, the problem I saw with that, which I didn't instantly spot, but like after the whole lengthy conversation, I think now with that screenshot I can more easily point out what I think is an underlying conflict in how we understand the current model, which would be useful to address on Tuesday.
Yeah. This is not it. This is something else that I started working on after, I guess, Wednesday's meeting, the Trump built a wall thing, which maybe we can talk about later. But here's the.
Yes. So my question was, where does the text, the simplified text, like in this example, if you have a claim Paris is a great city, yes, because it is nice in the summer. My question was, where does that text live in an instance diagram of the model we so far have that we discuss on Tuesdays? What I always said on Socrates, I don't allow it is nice in the summer as claims, because they're not free of context. They can't stand on their own. And then the discussion, which we both agree, it might be useful to store that text somewhere to simplify the presentation, so you don't have to write out in full. It is nice whether it is nice in the summer in Paris. Like Paris is the thing, is a missing context here of this premise, which is implied because you're targeting Paris is a great city as a conclusion. So the whole discussion was about, like, how do you know whether or not you should, where is the text stored? And in this instance diagram, you can see that Tim, and this is where the conflict arises, and I think this is wrong, Tim wants to store it in the statement of support. Now, in my opinion, that's wrong. Support is a claim, meaning that support has a statement, meaning the statement of a claim is the representation on which you can judge whether or not it's true or false. It is nice in the summer here is an alternate representation of the premise. The full out premise, it is nice in the summer in Paris. And this is a short representation of that premise if it's targeting the claim Paris is a great city. But actually, statement of support should be, it is nice in the summer in Paris, supports Paris is a great city. That's the statement of support.
My reaction to that is, what is the point of storing that? You wouldn't store that, because that's gonna, no one.
Store
do
what?
You have in your system a field that people enter? Do you ask people to rephrase, it is nice in the summer, supports Paris is a great city? Like, do you actually have people rephrasing that in their terminology? Or is that something you always auto-generate?
that's not the point. My point
No,
was
it is a point for my question, because if it's something you're always auto-generating, storage is a moot question.
but
You're
I'm not
storing
talking
it.
about storing it.
Well, then,
This is statement can be generated. Like when we set support, the
well,
statement
then
of
we're what we're doing is we're overloading terms here,
can I
right?
can I try
I'm
to
talking-
explain what I'm trying to say?
Okay.
Statements is a property of claim. I don't care whether it's generated, whether it's, you can retrieve, you can look at any claim. It doesn't matter what it's support. This is Liskov substitution principle. You can look at any claim. The purpose of the property of statement on claim is if you show that statement, the user can make a judgment whether or not it's true or false. That is what statement of claim is. What I'm saying is if you store it is nice in the summer, in statement of support, that's not what that is. I'm not
Yeah, but
saying
this
I'm
is
not
what I'm saying.
saying
We're overloading
you
terms.
have
So the
to.
confusion is based on what words we're using, rather than, because I'm saying statement is an attribute that gets stored with support, and you're saying statement is what the user sees when they look at a support. I agree you can auto-generate something that the user looks at when they see the support, and I agree it can be generated from a claim and from a premise and conclusion statements. I agree with that. That's fine. My version of statement here is exactly the definition being an attribute of the class support that a user enters, right? So they're two different things.
Yeah, okay, and that's a violation of the Liskov substitution principle. That's what I'm trying to explain. Does statement of support overload statement of claim, yes or no?
The statement of in the interface I would design,
No, not in the
yes.
interface, in the implementation of the model. You have an abstract class claim with a property statement. Support inherits from claim.
So,
Does
you know,
statement-
it depends on how we do the model. We have a problem, right? Because we've said statement and claim should be required.
One
So,
second, one second, one
wait.
second. Go.
Well, let me just answer directly specifically his question about modeling, which is that, you know, I want statement and claim to be required, and I want statement and support to be optional. Which means if you make support directly inherit from claim, that's incompatible. I agree with that. So, but that's a modeling question. The objective is statement should be optional, and is what in support should be optional, and what is presented in the case that it exists instead of the statement of the premise.
I'm not certain when you say statement twice in the same sentence here, you're talking about the same statement, first of all. Second of all, you can also turn statement into a function, get statement, store it in claim, and not store it in support, and generate it in support from a function, which is exactly what I do in Socrates indeed.
But when you do it that way, it doesn't fulfill my purpose for statement and support.
Which is argument text, which is something different than statement, which is what I'm trying to tell you. But what you want to store is an alternate visualization of the premise in support, a shortened version of the premise in support, which can be used when the conclusion is shown as well. That's what you want to store. That's not a statement of support.
Okay. The statement of support should be Paris is a great city because it is nice in the summer.
Exactly.
That's what the support that's what the support statement as a self-contained thing should be, which whether it's optional or not can be another story, but certainly, and I think it's certainly a good thing that the user can see it, whether it's auto-composed from the premise and claim.
The point here is indeed that you can create a user interface that runs on top of that model, and it can always show statement text. If you're showing support and you want to show the statement text, it is not, it is nice in the summer. It is indeed what Michael Twan just said. The text you want to store is the text you want to show when you're showing the support at the premise and the conclusion all at once, and you want to show a short. So calling that statement is highly ambiguous, not in line with the model, not in line with LSP, etc. It just, and that's, I think, the biggest miscommunication we had on Hangouts.
Yeah, well, no, okay, I agree with a lot of that, and I'm fine with calling it argument text. The problem is the way the model's designed. Support inherits from claim, and therefore has a statement, and therefore the statement is mandatory and is not a function. It is text that is entered by the user, and that's what statement is. I don't care if you want a different, if you think of it as being whatever's presented to the user. It's not. There's a function that we can call statement function or whatever, right? That is a separate function. Just the way argument text is a separate attribute. Your function for what is shown is not the same thing as statement here. Statement here is a string field entered by the user that is required. And if support inherits from claim, it's there.
But what is required? That's my question. And that was the whole discussion on Hangouts. Do you require the
What's
user
required
to enter
is the
a
user typing
context-free
in
text of the
No,
claim?
that's maybe
Or do you
not.
require the user to enter argument text? They're two different things. Which one do you require the user to enter?
When okay, and that
let me
depends on
rephrase
how
this,
you
Tim.
implement the.
Yeah, no, exactly. I think it's required that there be a user visible representation. I think that's perfectly required. Whether that user representation needs to be human entered text or not, because I agree that in some case of supports, it makes more sense to generate than to require a user written sentence. I'm agnostic about that, but I think, yes, it should be possible to not require a user text for support statement, but I think it's still perfectly reasonable to say we always need that there can be text for statement, that there is a text for statement so that we can show something in the UX.
But
That's
again,
also a reasonable requirement.
I don't think he's talking about statement of support. He's talking about this other thing, which is the alternate presentation for premise, as far as I know.
Now there's something else. Yes, let me get into that. You ask where is that text stored, and in the case of it is nice in summer, you made the argument. My turn. I'll take some time.
Yeah.
It is. You said it is nice in summer is not usable because it's not indexical, and we should forbid it. And I see your point. I would not forbid it again because I'm thinking of some argument extraction or progressive formalization, but I agree that this is an improper claim. And we would like to replace, say, oh, it's nice in summer is something we found somewhere, which is an alternate statement of that claim. Because for me, sorry, claims have multiple statements, including hopefully a canonical one. And yes, we should say it is nice in summer. If it's proposed as canonical, is not a good one. So we want to replace it with a better one, which is Paris is nice in summer, which is not indexical and more can be judged on its own. Now, do we want...
more can be judged on its own, but not completely still, right? It's not fully
more. I did say more.
So
yes.
you think the canonical
totally.
statement, right? The problem is when you say canonical statement, you're probably meaning the most clear you could make it, or most unique. I would say almost, if it's going to be the canonical statement, it would be unique in the same way that the claim is unique.
I agree. I agree with what you're saying. Yes. And this is where also even those probably won't have a human entered form, because when you put all the caveats and context and this and that, it will become perfectly illegible. And because it's illegible, nobody will write it, which up to a point is not a... The question I think you're getting at, Tim, and I think I see your point, is that a perfectly clear, unambiguous statement, which is what we want to be able to judge it on its own, may not be the best one to show to the user in a given context of a given argument.
Yeah.
If that,
nobody disagreed on that.
No, I don't think so. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think Stephen, and like parentheses, a lot of our disagreement is not disagreement. We actually agree on almost everything. most of it is the words we're using and our interpretation of each other's words. But go on.
Which is why I brought this up. I don't agree to store it is nice in the summer as a statement text of support. I don't agree on that.
I got that, and that's a place we do disagree, but we'll get there.
Anyway, I think it's very important to have multiple statements. I always said some statements have provenance. I don't know if you remember my symbol diagram. Should I put it back? Let me, you may want to, give me 2 seconds with a screen, Tim, actually. I just want to bring that back. Yes, this one, even if it's perfectly redundant now. Oh. No. There. Thought proxy. So the idea that there's symbols, some of which may be decontextualized, some of which are in context of a document, and they're all symbols, and they're connected many-to-many to thought proxy, which is, you know, the base of entity claim and everything else. And it's true that this is missing something, which is, here's the canonical symbol we'll show to somebody when we put it in the UX. That's missing from my diagram here, but it's a perfectly reasonable requirement. That's an old diagram. It needs to be updated. But the notion that symbols are a thing in themselves, and you know, text symbol, textron, whatever, and they can exist in or out of context, and they're in a many-to-many relation with thought proxies. This has evolved a lot since then. I'm totally, you remember when I said symbols are kind of like pointless topology equivalence class of symbol equivalence. I'm definitely progressing on that, and maybe it's something I want to get more into if you want. But even though I agree totally with Stephen, we need at least one, not canonical, but not canonical in the sense of canonical debate, but here is what we'll show to a user when we show the textual representation of this concept. This is the base, the first choice, the default choice of which symbol we'll show when we show the concept. And in that sense, it's the canonical name of the concept. Even though it's not canonical in canonical debate sense. Canonical debate sense. Okay, that's what I wanted to show, the many-to-many. The rest, still working on, but what I'm definitely working on making the evolution of a concept's name as a CRDT and this kind of weird hash table where we have a bunch of symbols, which when you have a symbol, you can say, okay, what are the possible canonical concepts or canonical names of concepts which have been referred to with this symbol, because there can be many. And even if it's a canonical name, the notion is a canonical name is unique, uniquely designates a concept. Like if there's two concepts, the same canonical name, create a new canonical name.
I think this is yet another separate discussion, and this has to do with the duplication of. I mean, this is also valid. This is like, how can you say that one symbol is the same than another, and you want to store both symbols, and you want to say they're actually the same? I might not have used the right terminology in line with your diagram there, but
what I'm saying is a name may designate many concepts, and when you give a name, it may, even if it's the canonical name of a concept, it may need to have a new canonical name for it. I don't know. It may correspond to multiple canonical names. Even a canonical name may have been used to designate many other canonical names, unfortunately.
I think why I'm saying that is a separate discussion is because for me, this is when we're talking about multiple supports, the way we have modeled it right now. Why we want to say they are the same,
multiple entities.
Because right now support only has one statement, a claim only has one statement, so we haven't modeled that part yet. I think it's relevant, but I don't think what you're talking about right now fits into the problem that the disagreement we have found in the current thing that is modeled.
It's not unrelated, because the point is there's many ways to show the claim or the support or the whatever in the UX. Like there's the Paris is nice in the summer, which is allows that claim, that premise to be read more independently, and it is nice in the summer, which allows to show it better dependently in a given context. So
Exactly.
already we have two statements for a claim. So the notion that claims and
I wouldn't call that a
statements
statement.
are in many-to-many relationship is relevant now. You wouldn't call them statements, that's fair, but many symbols, I call them symbols anyway.
But I think that, yeah, I think we agree. It's just you're jumping ahead.
No, but it is relevant now. The fact that there's many possible textual representations of a claim.
We need different. I always emphasize glossary. I still think it was a very bad idea to abandon that approach. The problem is Tim is calling two things statement, and they're not the same. One is indeed with the context of conclusion in mind. The other one is the one that you want to show independently of any context. It should work in any context. These two things should have different names. I've been trying to use argument text for the former, statement of the claim for the latter. Like if we can just already decide on a name for that and recognize that they're different, and depending on the use case, the UI will have to show something different, then we can start talking about the model.
Why not contextualize symbol and decontextualize symbol as Marc-Antoine suggests?
Yes, yeah, sure, except to contextualize this symbol to which context, right? But yeah, that could work. The reason I want to store it in support is, of course, because it's within the context of support. It's literally the context of the conclusion, which allows you to write the premise shorter. That's why I call it argument text, because it's nothing more than the premise argument text, if you will, or whatever.
Yeah, it's a specific decontextualized symbol. So it's a special, which has a certain role, which is showing it in a certain context.
Yeah.
And you may need many contextualized representations.
But
like
then they would be in different supports, right? For example.
Oh, you'd store it in the support and in
because
the
it is the conclusion of the support that determines why it's different. It's fully determined by the conclusion. That's the context that's missing. It's indexical to the conclusion.
That makes sense. So what you're saying is store this alternative statement of the claim in the support object.
Quotes.
Yeah, that.
And not in statement, just
me.
as like a premise representation, as an optional thing in support, and not
Sounds
in statement.
Good to me. Sounds good to me.
And yes, statements can be optional because we know it can be generated. In the case of support, it would be A supports B, for example, could be one way of rendering statement, which means that statement is probably a function and not a field that is mandatory on the abstract claim.
Yeah. User statement would be an optional field, and statement would be a function that cannot return null, but returns user function if present.
Another way is making it mandatory, but then just when you create the support, initializing it, but then you don't have multilingual stuff either way. You probably don't have that. I mean, there's many ways of modeling this, but it doesn't really matter. My main point is, please don't store it is nice in the summer in statement of support. That's all I'm saying.
I agree.
Yes, please. Is it empty?
Tim?
Yeah, it's fine. Thank you.
How do you feel about what we're saying?
I agree with all of it except the objection to storing it in statement and support. Statement and support has no other purpose, right? I don't agree to the objection of storing it in statement of support. I don't understand the objection to putting it there, except if you want to make statement and claim required and statement and support optional. I understand that there should be like a user text method function, right, that returns a value.
It's a more fundamental problem, Timothy. It means you don't recognize support as a claim. Support is a claim. It inherits from claim. Support is a claim. What is that claim? Try to say it out in full. What is it that if you judge whether or not support is true or false? What is it that
why does statement have to match? Why does a user entered text have to match exactly what support is when you look at it on a standalone thing? Okay. I mean,
can you tell me right now, it is nice in the summer? Is that true or false?
Are you talking about the claim down here?
You're showing a claim anywhere in the system you're showing a claim and the statement of the claim is it is nice in the summer. Is that true or false?
I would say it's
No,
true.
but okay, but see, here's the thing: is Felix, you want to say something or?
No, I just said it a joke. Like I think it's true. It's better in the summer, in general.
Yeah, he's just enjoying it. He's enjoying the reality of it. But like, no, here's the thing: is like, I guess you are hung up on the it doesn't match the domain. It's a very kind of pure,
But that's a use
puritanical
case.
view. Like I
You
would
want to
never
create a
design
user
my
interface that
system.
can show any claim that's stored in a backend. You just pulling claims. The purpose of a claim is that you can evaluate it independently from any other context, and you can say whether it's true or false. So yes, I don't care
Right,
what
but
it's supposed
no,
or
the
whatever.
question is, can I do what you want to do if I'm storing statement in the if I'm storing the user ender text in the statement field of a support? Can I do what you want to do? Yes,
Of
I
course, you
can.
can do if claim is instance of support, then show and then
Yeah, of
but
course.
you're just hacking shit together. It's
Sorry,
a clear.
sorry.
Yeah, but okay, then I think you're being way too puritanical about how the model should be. It has to be this perfect model. It doesn't matter if it works and if it's in fact like ad absurdum. It sounds like you would sacrifice efficiency because you want the model to be
Nothing to
beautiful
do
and
with
match the domain.
efficiency.
I know
It has to do with
I'm straw manning
modeling
there.
proper
I'm straw manning,
abstractions.
but
You're breaking an
I think your
abstraction.
objection is too strong. It doesn't merit. Like,
I
it's a
have
model
an
design issue.
objection. I have an objection. We just spoke about the statement, it is nice in the summer, and you had to ask, oh, do you mean the support or the claim?
Exactly.
The fact that the two statements are the same creates confusion because I don't know if I'm speaking about the link
No, it doesn't.
or the premise.
One is the support. Displaying a support, you write out the text because like Paris is a great city because it is nice in the summer. So that problem solved. Where is the confusion
there? What's the purpose of claim? Why don't you just have like then an atomic claim and a support and you don't have a base clause? What's the purpose
It's
of the base
something
clause?
that it's something you can add to which you can add supports.
I guarantee
something that is true or false or believable, acceptable, whether or not
that's fine, but an unstored statement in the base class. Then this.
What I guarantee will happen is that some users will want to attack the premise and attack the support or vice versa. Because right now, if you write the support in the form of the premise,
well, first of all,
people will not understand the difference between attacking the premise and attacking the logical link.
First of all, that's already a problem. That's already a problem.
Yeah,
the average
and that's
person
what I
does
want to
not
solve.
understand. That's fine, but you solve it. This is why I say it's a UI problem. You solve it by guiding users to understand these concepts in the UI.
Yes,
There's no implementation problem whatsoever by storing this stuff in the statement field. There is absolutely no problem. The problem is you think it's not beautiful because it doesn't match your concept
that comes
of statement.
in like that. That's the problem.
Yeah, exactly. Because it's not a beautiful design for you, but
it's the reason why you have abstract classes. You don't want instance. The point of polymorphism is you can act on the abstract class. If any situation where you want to act on the fields in the abstract class, you need to know the specific instances. There's no fucking point in having it in the abstract class in the first place.
No, you have a method called user text, and you have a different implementation for user text and support than you do in claim. And there you go.
I've got another question. What happens with multi-premise argument?
Well, we don't have multi-premise argument. It's not.
It's not resolved.
Exactly. So that we have to cross that bridge when we get there. But having in the claim class a user text method solves that problem. Polymorphism.
We're Friday. Sorry, multi-premise arguments are in on Fridays at least.
Okay, all right, but I don't know your model for multi-premise argument, but I would say that problem is still solved. If you're saying a multi-premise argument is a support or is a subclass of claim, you solve the problem by having a user text method that gets overridden by the subclasses, and you have your polymorphism, right?
I'm just going to share this because I don't know why we're even discussing this. I mean, sure, yeah, I'm advocating proper OB design, but I'm just surprised we're discussing this. I mean, yes, this is exactly the list of substitution principle states that the subtypes must be substitutable for the base types. When this principle is violated, it tends to result in a lot of extra conditional logic scattered throughout the application. The if checks you're talking about. This is why
If I
you don't do it
violate
like
that, do I go to jail? What happens?
You have unmaintainable code.
No, you don't.
It's not a UI issue. It's like everywhere you use fucking specializations of
Okay,
claims, you
that's
need to
why
do
that's why
type checking.
like I prefer not to continue this discussion because it's totally in the abstract. It's absolutely an empirical thing
It's
we can
not.
work with, but I've never had a problem with this sort of thing.
What's your problem with doing
throwing
it?
out.
Okay, fair enough. Let's say that I'm being a purist. What's the problem with doing it the purist way and just adding a argument text field in support instead and storing it there? What's the problem with that?
All right, what do you do with the statement text?
Which one?
The
The
statement.
one that support has because it inherited from
Then,
claim.
then
I
it will
already told you it
contain
would be a
Paris is
function,
nice
yes.
because no, sorry, Paris is not. What's your? Oh,
Then
I
where are
lost it.
you storing? Where are you storing the user entered text for the claim?
As he said, in another field, another
Argument
field that's
text or
connected
whatever
to
you want
the.
to claim. Yeah.
What do you
Yeah.
call that field?
Argument text or alternate premise visualization or that
alternate
field,
premise text.
that field you're talking
So
about. Timothy,
claim has argument text is what you're saying.
no, support has argument text. Only
So
support.
where are you storing the user entered text on a claim, which is not a
In
support?
statement.
It depends which text the user is supposed to
So
enter.
support has a field called statement that is hopefully mandatory and is never used.
No, it's not never used. The Paris is
When is it used?
I can show you.
For the
it's
full
that
sentence
A
with
supports
because.
B. Yeah. Like the, and it's not for
It's
me. I
used
don't.
by the method user text is what you're saying.
What is a method user? It depends how you model it. Like
Okay,
all that
let's try
matters
this
is
again.
that every
Let's try this
claim-
again. The class claim has a field called statement that is
Does it have a field or
string
a-
entered by the user.
Does it have to be a field? Why does it have to be a field?
Okay, what is it? The user enters
I'm
text.
saying
Where does
it
that
can be a
text
method.
go?
It is a method. It's an abstract method.
Users do not write to methods. Users write data and the data gets stored in the object.
Yeah, but
So where does the
it
data get
depends.
stored in the object?
May I interrupt the whole thing as a functional
Yes.
programmer? I'd say it doesn't matter how you implement it as long as the implementations are isomorphic. And we don't need this discussion here.
yeah,
Okay,
That-
but as an object-oriented programmer, we have data associated with behavior. Where is the data going?
Okay, here, by the way, what I was proposing myself is a kind of hybrid. I'd have a user text optional text field for when the user enters the text, but people would never use that. They'd use the statement method, and the statement method will first check the user text field. If it's there, return that, otherwise generate.
well,
The-
You have a user text field.
I just have two specializations. I have an atomic statement and I have hard support. I don't know what I call them. I can show you. I'm opening the code base. I just have an interface, if you will. I don't have a base thing that stores it. And I have
Yeah,
one
that's
specialization,
cool.
which is atomic, and the other one, which is a argument to support, whatever you want to call it.
But I
So
would,
you
I would
create an
still have,
abstract. Yeah.
Yeah.
I would still
and
have the
one
text
generates it,
field.
the other one is the text that the user enters. That's it.
and I would have the text field even for the claim, because sometimes there's a textual formulation human entered that is clearer than the generated one. So I would have the field in all cases.
But that's a
myself.
separate discussion. That's
Right, right.
It
even
is a separate discussion, but say, Tim, you're asking, how would we model this? We both have models, which I think work perfectly well in an OO fashion and are not, are very clear on what support is about. It's about, this is a, statement. The statement allows to represent that thing independently of other things. Now, if we want to represent them in context, we'll have other methods and possibly other fields. But I'm saying there's two purposes. One is representing out of context and one for representing in context. Those are two separate needs and use cases which should be served by different
Except
methods.
that a standalone claim, a claim, not a support,
Yep.
should never have a contextual statement. store.
Exactly. So you don't store it there. You don't store it on that interface. Exactly. It's only
Right. So
support that has that.
you're putting in the parent class requirements of the child class, which is
that's-
also bad design.
No, you
Unless
don't
you
put
do
it-
That's fair. That's
what
fair.
Steven's
Okay, I'll
doing,
grant,
which is
But you don't put it. I
I'll
don't
grant
put.
you that. I'll grant you that.
I don't
So
put
what I would do is the
argument text in the
context.
parent class.
no, you don't
No.
put argument text anywhere. You have a parent class that is the abstract class, and then you have claim being a subclass that has user entered text, and support being a sibling that has generated text.
Yeah, and argument
Right,
text.
that's your solution for the problem. I
Yeah.
understand.
What's the problem with that?
No, that solves a problem. It doesn't let the user enter a contextual version of a statement, which is something that at least I and Marc-Antoine want.
I just
But-
said you store argument text in support and the specialization of support. That's where the contextual
Okay,
representation is stored, because it's part of that specialization.
And
that's a
support
fine
that.
design. I think that's okay. That's fine.
Good.
That's a fine
That's it.
solution. Yes.
That's it.
And
I'm
that's
thinking
what
I-
I do, except that I don't have that field.
I'm
because
almost
I
thinking
don't
I,
have that
yeah.
yet.
I'm almost thinking I should take Monday. I should never have allowed that discussion to happen. But oh well.
But it's an important discussion, because that's where
It
the
is an
whole
important discussion.
miscommunication happened. I didn't know
Okay.
we were
No,
storing.
I needed
argument
to learn
text.
what happened. I needed to, you know what? This was a better use of my time than reading the whole thread. So yeah, thank you.
For sure. I
I
mean, there's a separate disagreement that is also rich and also more fundamental. I don't know how important it is right now. So I will present the disagreement. You decide if you want to go down that road or not.
okay.
Which is it comes to the question of no, we don't let claims like that happen, be created, right? If you look at my diagram,
Yeah,
it's
and
got a
that's
very
something I
poorly
touched on.
stated claim. Yeah. It's got a very poorly stated claim, which is a side effect of how I think people tend to
Actually write.
enter arguments, right?
Or speak.
Which
worse.
is, people interact with the system, they see a claim and they want to argue against it. First of all, we have that problem of, do they know they're arguing against the claim or against the relevance of an argument? That's a separate question. But they want to respond in context, which means they're going to use pronouns, right? Now, in my systems and in debate map does this too. You essentially present a simplified interface for the user, so they don't have to, you don't overload them with formalisms, where they just put in the text they want to say, right? Now you're creating support at that time, but if they're not reusing some other existing premise, they're also creating a claim at the same time, right? So you're simultaneously creating the support and the claim. What do you do then, right? Now, my solution has always been, I provide the option of them giving it a more context-free version. But if they don't want to bother, then I create the support and the claim at the same time with the text they entered, which will tend to be contextual with pronouns and everything, which creates a problem that now you have a standalone claim that is extremely ambiguous because it's using pronouns.
That's a real problem.
Steven's approach, is twofold. One, there's no user-entered text for the support, so it goes straight to the claim. And second, he doesn't permit contextual statements.
What he calls indexical, yeah.
Indexical, right. And the way that's enforced is by having an approval phase, an approval process before actually releasing it to the public.
Yep. No, that's a real fascinating UX problem, and absolutely yes. Let's discuss that.
It's can I shortly interject, because that's the other thing. There were two disagreements. The previous one we just talked about. The one thing you mentioned is also the one that I highlighted in the post-mortem thread, if you will. I don't know whether anyone read it, and it's exactly this. So I'm glad you brought it up, Timothy. For me, the disagreement lies in what it means to be incremental, what incremental formalization is, because in one case, you always talk about this as, say, they can optionally add it, but what you're saying is you allow them to add something which doesn't comply with the guidelines because we don't want that claim there. In one case, if you allow that, it means that it needs to be edited, right? It needs to be curated. The whole lengthy thread, where I understood, was that you made it optional, that they don't have to add context-free one, meaning it's unspecified and it can be added later. And that's when I started talking about nullable premises and shit like that. These are two different approaches. One is allowing people to just only add the context-dependent form, the indexical form, and you don't even act as if the you have the context-free form. You don't store it. So you allow basically premise on support to be null, and all you have is argument text. Does that make sense? What you're saying is you instantly add it as a claim, and then it gets curated out. But that's not incremental formalization, that's curation. What I would call incremental formalization for me is never destructive. You don't edit anything. It means that you add additional formalisms on top of previously defined things. It should be immutable. So
Yeah, I have a
Well,
much broader understanding of what incremental formalization entails. And I agree that increasing formalism is one form of it, but I do include the curation when I cover. My definition of incremental formalization covers what you call curation. Let's put it that way. I think this will be one of those.
But then it's a useful distinguish.
It is a useful distinction, yes.
Yeah.
I'm not saying it's not a useful distinction, but I'm just caveating every time I said incremental formalization, I was including stuff that you're distinguishing as curation validly. But my definition was encompassing both.
But so it becomes a UI question indeed. When a user adds support, do you tell them, do you make the distinction between the two clear to them or not? And
it's a UI question. There's also the process question, right? I agree with what you both said in terms of there's both a separation between curation and incremental formalization, but also they're both necessary, right? And I assume, well, I guess let me put it this way, Stephen. How would you deal with submissions that are just bad text in general? Not this example, but other ones where just the statement needs to be refined.
Well, it depends on what refined is. For me, the same way, when I say claim is a statement and a statement can be judged on its own, it means it can also be curated on its own. It means that if you look at that claim, you read it, is it a claim that makes sense or not? Is it, if you read it by itself, is it clear? Can you make a judgment whether it's true or false?
And
the answer is no, then it's false. It will be curated and I turn it into drafts, but you can have whatever curation mechanism. If the answer is true, it stays there, it's immutable. If you can judge it by itself to be true or false, everything else that might be that you need mechanisms to further disambiguate, but the original claim always stays there.
I guess my question then is, do you ever foresee a situation in which the curation can be crowdsourced, or that doesn't require absolute gating on submissions?
But you can, I don't get the question. You can do
because I think like what I am envisioning is a crowdsourcing system where people independently create these claims or arguments or whatever, and you expect poor quality, and there are mechanisms to improve the quality over time without it essentially being set in stone once it's been approved. No approval process, you know. And I could see that you know, one thing I'm seeing here is if you're envisioning a system that always gets approval before any submission enters into the system, you don't see a need for, I could see why immutability makes more sense to you, right?
It's not even true. So approval at first is just because I know, and that's what I saw as well, people that first start contributing, they don't know how to write context-free claims. So you need to learn them, and the way you do that is by having an approval phase. And like after having done it 4 times, the 4th contribution they don't have to go through that approval phase. I still have a mechanism that previous contributions that have been approved can be rejected, can be again turned into drafts, and that's why I have this limitation. If you have a lot of bad contributions, which on Stack Exchange is the same as having 5 closed questions, none of which have been reopened, you can't submit anymore. It's very similar. If you have 5 like claims which have been turned into a draft, which have been said, these can't be judged independently from any other context, then you can't do any new submissions. So but that's a curation mechanism, right? So yeah, no, I do see bad contributions happening, but a bad contribution is judged out of context. That's the beauty of it. If a claim can be judged independently of any context, it's approved. And then you can start arguing whether it's relevant in the context, but that doesn't make the original claim that was posted invalid.
But yeah, I'm wondering if it should be possible as part of the curation mechanism to say, let's read the text, this unintelligible claim, because it's unintelligible without context. Let's read it in context and let's see if we can transform it into a decontextualized claim.
Yeah, but that would be assisting basically the person
Yes.
submitting it in making their rejected or draft or whatever the name is, like helping it pass. Yeah.
Absolutely. Can we crowdsource this training? And I believe it's worth it, because the reality is excessive use of context is only one of 1,000 ways they can make their claims badly. And anyway, we want to help them learn to make better claims.
Yeah.
And
but the problem is once you edit a claim that has been approved and is being used, again, this is the whole point, claim reuse that is being used elsewhere, you run into issues, because then you need to evaluate wherever that claim is being used, whether the edit still fits. And then the question is, what about people that have voted on this, etc.
No, but I see that as a necessary evil, frankly, because for me, it's clear that no claim exists in isolation, right? So that means any claim has all this connotational cloud, like, oh, when we think of this, we think of this, that. And suddenly some new element is added to the conversation, which makes you reinterpret the claim. And I didn't think of that aspect.
That's a different use case. That's a different use case. Yeah, that's why I'm saying. That's why I'm saying.
Different but related. What I'm saying is
it's not really related. The point is that what it means for a claim to be able to be judged independently means that you can judge it in all of these undefined contexts. And
yes, I don't believe that's possible.
No, it isn't. But that's why we need argument mapping facilities to say this claim is a more specific version of the other, which has a more specific context. But that is outside of the point whether or not you can judge that claim independently, whether it makes sense on its own. It might mean that you're undecided. It depends on additional context, but the claim still is meaningful on its own. It doesn't point to things that
what I'm saying, that's always an illusion. I'm saying that this is just because we read a claim with a certain cultural lens, with a certain bias, from a certain stance in the world, race, gender, whatever. And that means there's no such thing as acontextual. There's the illusion of acontextuality, but there's never the reality of it.
Ambiguous. Different people infer different additional contexts, and that's where the disagreement lies. So you can start adding, supporting, and opposing arguments. And then you uncover that support or oppose depends on what different contexts people pull in. But that's what you want to model. That's exactly what you want to model.
Yes.
So the original claim is still valuable, even if it's vague and people have different contexts. That's my point. The original claim is still valuable.
It is valuable, but I don't think it's evaluable permanently.
Evaluable?
Meaning you were saying, can you say whether it's true or false out of context?
Oh no, yeah. These are the it depends claims, and that's why
But I'm saying all claims are it depends claims. I haven't seen a claim that I couldn't make into an it depends claim with enough imagination.
Even this one is an it depends claim. It depends on how many people share the same other expected context.
Until somebody new comes along,
the less it depends.
No, and until somebody else comes along with a different enough perspective.
But that's exactly what needs to be modeled. That's the
But
outcome
there
of
I
the
agree with
argument,
you.
not for me.
There I agree with you. It's what needs to be modeled. But what I'm saying is, because I don't believe in claims existing independent of context. For me, the meaning of the claim is everything that's said about it ever. So that means the meaning changes all the time. It has no fixed meaning.
I see your point and I agree, but I'm trying to phrase a difference between that chair is ugly and the claim chairs are ugly. The latter, I would say, yes, that's a fine claim. The former, it clearly depends on something people cannot possibly evaluate. I mean, do you see the difference?
I don't, honestly, because chairs are ugly seems to me equally impossible to evaluate.
That's the difference I'm trying to point out. That chair is ugly obviously depends on you pointing to something specific. It's obvious that depending what you point to,
the indexicality is there.
You're talking about a different thing. That I would reject. When you say chairs are ugly, yeah, you can be talking about kitchen chairs, you can be talking about some modern chairs. There, the disagreement is going to lie in what you mean by chair.
Hidden indexicality is a real difference and a real phenomenon, and we want to account for it. There, I'm with you. But what I'm saying is, when people introduce in a system like debate map or whatever, an indexical claim like it is nice in the summer, and that we have in the screen in front
Funny
of
enough,
us,
it's actually also not. It is also a claim I would approve. It's a really interesting one in that sense. You can say it is nice in the summer everywhere where there is summer.
In a totally different interpretation of the same symbol.
Exactly.
And this is why symbols are most useful in their contextual form, and the best.
That's interesting. Wait. Let's pause on that.
Oh, it's nice in the summer.
No. Let's pause on what Steven said there, that he would approve it. When you approve it, are you approving that somebody is creating a discussion that summers are nice? Or are you approving that someone is trying to say Paris is nice in the summer because they put it as an argument to support
As I said, I only allow right now on Socrates, I only allow context-free claims. These are the only ones I show. So yes, it's the generally speaking, this nice in summer claim that would get approved.
No, but are you approving the context-free claim? I'm adding it to support Paris is a great city, and you're going to improve it.
I'm
with
going
the understanding that people are talking about summers being nice.
I'm going to add an argument against the relevance of that context-free claim, like, well, this says nothing about Paris.
This is absolutely fascinating.
That's fascinating.
It is. I don't allow argument text right now. I want to teach this is my solution for this problem. I'm trying to teach the user, to make it easy for the user to have all claims be free of context. That's the mindset you need to put users into if you want.
And I would argue you're going to throw a lot of confusion in there, right there, because people are going to come to the debate and see that people are making arguments like it is nice and go and copy that behavior because you approved it as an acceptable argument.
This is the exception.
And you'll keep approving them, and you'll keep trying to knock them down by saying summers aren't nice.
This is the exception, Timothy. In most cases, it's very often. It's like with words like more, like you did, and it's very often, strikingly, this is the rare occasion where an indexical one is actually also non-indexical.
Where it can be used either personally or impersonally in grammatical terms. Yeah, that's a very.
But like I said,
language is ambiguous.
The way this would pan out is that that person trying to add it as a context-free claim, it might get approved, but it will instantly become irrelevant because as a context-free claim, it's not argument text. As a context-free claim, it's irrelevant for the conclusion Paris is a great city. So it resolves itself because you only model context-free claims.
That's amusing. I see your point. It's really interesting. But and we all say, and even you, I mean, Stephen, I think we all agree, people will enter indexical claims. It's a fact of life. And the question is, how do we help them, make them less ambiguous, less contextual, less this, less that? And then again, that's UX approaches, right?
Well, and you could even consider allowing users to add indexical claims. But then I'm saying, then I don't want to model them as context-free claims. And that's why I suggested maybe we can have nullable premises in support. It's not a bad idea, but it's not
a bad idea.
One problem, concrete. Can I quickly? one problem is, unless we do natural language processing, we don't know. And with all the, and in this case, the natural language processing engine would totally choke because we as humans choke. We cannot easily know whether a given sentence is indexical or not with some degree of certainty. It might be actually a good idea to have natural language processing and to say, let's do it, and let's point out to the user, hey, you know what? This has an unresolved pronoun. Can you use the entity here? Is that this entity? Can I substitute this entity in the sentence? Is that still what you mean?
Which is basically what I did manually now through comments. I mean, but yes, it happens, and you can automate part of that through NLP, I'm certain.
Yeah, it can be done, no problem. And it's totally worth it, I think, even. But we can live without it because you can do it manually. I agree also. But what I'm saying is, in terms of modeling in fields, when I get a sentence, unless I have NLP, I don't know if it falls in the indexical or not indexical. All I know is it enters in the informal, not yet analyzed statement field, because the distinction between the two fields, which I agreed with, is opaque to the system a priori. It receives a user sentence, and it's like, is this supposed to be context-free or is this supposed to be contextual?
But this is where it becomes a UX issue. Like, do you allow the user? Do you explain these two concepts to the user?
No, you explain to you may explain till your first face turns blue and the user will make a mistake.
No, but you have to tell the user, is the user allowed to enter argument text, or does it always have to be context-free, or does the user choose which one it is, or does he add both? That becomes a UX issue. And there is, well, I mean, I don't do it right now, so I'm being devil's advocate here, but I know this is one of the main problems that my user experienced. There is something to say, especially for new users, just let them only add the argument text and then have a curation process where any supports without premises, basically. You have some curators, they get flagged, and they help the new users out, phrasing their argument text as creating the premise that's still missing so far. That's totally valid way of thinking about it.
Yes, and there I agree with you. I mean, this is actually one of the few cases I've been extremely adamant that bots are useless, but this is one case where bots would be really useful. Like guiding
if you can automate it, sure. If you can,
guiding the
awesome.
user. Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway, so
I have a hard stop, but I would like to just highlight an important conflict here, which is, one of the objectives in the white paper is, I mean, essentially by gating claims, right, submissions. One of my goals is to eliminate the we here. You need a we, right? It's centralized. Once you start doing that, at least to varying degrees, it has to be centralized. And this is Felix could come in and with all his strategies of how to improve this. But the goal is to eliminate the perception of a we, because it needs to be totally trusted, and that means everyone owns it and not anybody with a specific bias is owning it and controlling it. So that to me is the main conflict there. And I've talked about
what
maybe
do you mean by
we.
Let's put it this way.
Who is approving the submissions? That's the question. And if it's
but that's a
anybody who could be
mechanism.
seen,
and indeed feel
right, but the moment your mechanism is approving submissions, then you need to define who is approving it.
Yes.
And I'm not against having approving submissions necessarily. There's pros and cons there, but I don't have a strong.
Well, very shortly, what I imagine
opinion,
to do is obviously people that approve it need to understand what they're approving. So once they've demonstrated visibly in the system by other people that approve their submissions that they know what they're approving, then they're allowed to approve it. And it's very similar to the stack exchange model.
We'd have to come up with that sort of strategy. I have to go now. My other meeting has started. But,
okay. Thank you for today. I hope that clarified some of the disagreements. Let's try to resolve them on Tuesday.
It kept you from having to read the thread.
Thank you. And it ended up being useful. Ciao, ciao.
See you.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.